Yes.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Zainab Izhar. And before we begin with the class of Indo-Pak history, I would like to briefly introduce myself. As you know, my name is Zainab Izhar, and I cleared my CSS exams in 2021. And I recently been allocated in Pakistan Customs. So when I was told that I would be teaching Indo-Pak history, I wanted to make sure that everyone knows more about this course and more about this, syllabus. So we will briefly talk about that. So firstly, the course of Indo-Pak history, like 10 to 15 minutes for this, and then we'll start with the lecture, okay? So the Indo-Pak history course seems like it's very easy. Most of the time students don't take it seriously. However, when you look at it, when you look at the syllabus, it is quite extensive and there's a lot of history in it. There's a lot of different events and dates, etc. So you cannot get a good score without preparation, firstly. Our course, our classes will comprise of almost 12 sessions. And the entire course and the entire syllabus has 10 major areas on which we will focus. So before we commence with the class or the topic, I would like to say that usually students, okay, I'll also continue with both Urdu and English. So I want you to tell me in the chat if you are okay with English and Urdu both, or if you just want me to continue with English. Because I could continue with English, but it's just that agar zyadatar logon ko English mein cheezein samajh nahi aa rahi, okay, Kamar. So I will continue with both so that I could make it more interesting. Because usually आप जो content है जो Indo-Pak history का है वो आप कहीं से भी पढ़ सकते हैं. You can search online or you could read a book. It's just that when you give a lecture, you really want everyone to take interest in it and to get an idea and to actually learn. Okay, so you want me to continue with English? Fine, it's fine. जहाँ मुझे लगेगा कि मुझे एक उसको interest develop करना है, वहाँ पे मैं उसको एक story भी करूँगी. Okay. Say it. Chalo, okay, fine. I'll continue with English. So when you learn any history or any subject related to history, you have to develop a certain kind of interest in it because it can get very dry and it can be extremely intimidating for you. So you have to pick out something, or you have to, develop interest in a way where you find it as a story, So I would suggest that everyone, when you are starting to learn history or when you're starting to learn any history, specifically Indo-Pak, you must look at, concentrate on the events first, like what happened. And then you look at, okay, so this particular event happened. Then you look at the individuals that were involved. That is, I call it the DIP strategy: date, individuals, and place. So first look at the individuals, then the place where it happened, and then go back and learn the date, because dates usually intimidate people. So ये एक general सी tip थी जो कि मैं देना चाह रही थी before we commence with Indo-Pak history. Indo-Pak history का अगर आप syllabus उठाएं तो it focuses more on the advent of Islam and it focuses on the Muslim history. There is a lot of history before Muslims came to subcontinent. However, we will exclusively focus on the Muslim rule, because if you look at the first topic which we'll study today, which is Muslim rule and heritage in India, so that begins with 712 AD. Can anyone tell me what happened in 712 AD and why are we? Can anyone write it on chat? What happened in 712 AD? I want to know. Invasion of Arabs, yes. But there was one particular event that happened in 712 AD. Muhammad bin Qasim, yes, Muhammad bin Qasim arrived, yes, and he defeated Raja Tahir. So this is from where we start our history. However, advent of Islam, which is probably the first topic of this, I think now we should formally start our class or session. So the first topic that we are studying, I should get back to it. Muslim rule and heritage in India, which is from 712 AD till 1857. So the first topic is advent of Islam in subcontinent. Okay, and that usually we start from 712 AD. But if we look back and if we look at the history of Islam, the advent of Islam started from the Islam spreading in Arabia. which happened during the era of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who was not only the last messenger of Allah, but he was also the leader of the people. And during his in his lifetime, the entire Islam spread throughout the Arabia. Contrary to the popular belief that the Islam, there was no connection between Arabs and the South Asians before Islam, there was connection through trade between both South Asians as well as the Arabs, especially in the coastal areas of the South India. But after Islam came, a lot of Muslim Arab traders, they would visit the South Asian coast, and interestingly, a lot of people in those areas learned about Islam through the traders as well. So am I clear until now? Is there any confusion? Is there any confusion? Am I clear? Okay, good. So, Acha, I have to share one thing, that I did prepare PPT for this particular class, but unfortunately, due to certain technical issue, I have to take this class on my cell phone and I don't have my PPT in front of me. So I'll be referring to my notes as well as the timeline that I had made while studying as well as while preparing for this particular class. So I'll be looking into my notes more often. I hope that's not an issue for everyone. And I'll make sure that whatever I'm teaching, you understand it as well. Okay? Okay. Okay, so where were we? Yes. So advent and spread of Islam initially happened with Prophet, peace be upon him. And contrary to the popular belief, the Islam was there, even like the South Asians. Yes. Okay, yes. I will share my notes and I will share the PPT with it. Unfortunately, I would have shared it with you because I had prepared a PPT for this particular class. So there was this connection between the Muslim Arab traders. After Islam came, Muslim Arab traders visited the South Asian coast even before Muhammad bin Qasim. So, and we also know that there were Muslim conquests in Persia before Muslims came to South Asia, in the areas such as Kirman and Makran. And in these areas, the Muslim conquerors came face to face with the local rulers of which were non-Muslims in these regions. Okay, so when Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, after Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon his demise, during the era of Hazrat Umar and Hazrat Ali, Islam spread further. We know that, right? It spread in Persia, in Jerusalem, in Egypt, all of these, Egypt and Syria and Persia. And we know that during Hazrat Umar and Hazrat Ali's era, there were expeditions made towards India, but they were unsuccessful. So now we get to the third part. We first started with the introduction and how the relationship with the South Asians, etc. And now we come to the third part, which is the entry of Islam in subcontinent, and which caliphate? Umayyad Caliphate. So there were two major prominent caliphates in those times. One was Abbasid Caliphate and the other was Umayyad Caliphate. At that time, Umayyads were ruling, and during close to the period of Muhammad bin Qasim, the initial entry happened in the 1st century after the demise of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And the great caliph at that time was Walid bin Abdul Malik. And we all know about that. If you don't know, you must know that Walid bin Abdul Malik's famous general was Musa bin Nusayr, who was responsible for conquering most of the North Africa. And his lieutenant, we've heard about him a lot. His name was Tariq bin Ziyad, who conquered Spain. So this is the background of the Umayyad Caliphate. And while they maintained their stronghold in the West, like they conquered North Africa and Persia and all those regions, and Spain, they wanted to maintain their stronghold, they wanted to maintain their they wanted to uphold themselves in India as well. And it was only a matter of time that someone from Umayyad Caliphate would conquer or would make its entry in India. So now we began with the story of Muhammad bin Qasim. Anything, whatever I've shared, because this is the first class, And I'm taking this class online like this on a cell phone. So I hope that whatever I'm saying, I'm audible and I'm clear. Is it clear? Is it clear to everyone? Because I'm not using a PPT right now, so I hope I'm clear and I'm audible as well. Okay, good. Okay, so if you have any questions, any particular questions, you can note down and you can ask me later. So yeah, okay. So the first part is we would make an introduction. I'm also telling you the headings because this is how I prepared my notes, which I'll inshallah share it with you in the form of PPT. So if we start the story of Muhammad bin Qasim was born in 695 AD. He belonged to Saqafi tribe, which was a very popular tribe, and it originally belonged to Taif in Arabia. And interestingly, he was the nephew of province at that time, and that is why he was appointed the governor of Persia, and he was only a teenager at that time. Because of his performance in Persia, it made him a natural choice for what eventually became the conquest of Sindh. So how did the conquest, what was the reason? We all know that. We've heard this story quite a few times, but it is important to, read it again. I don't know if it's okay. Is there any distortion? Kindly let me know. Because I can't hear you people, so I want you to tell me if there is a distortion or if I should switch my internet. Okay, I'll try to slow down a bit. Okay. So where were we? Yes, we know about Muhammad bin Qasim. Okay, thank you. We know about Muhammad bin Qasim when he was born in 695 AD. Okay. Okay, I'll try to slow down a bit so that everyone could understand what I'm saying. Muhammad bin Qasim was born in 695 AD, and he belonged to Saqafi tribe. He was the nephew of Hajjaj bin Yusuf, who was from Eastern Province. He was a governor of Eastern Province. So as a teenager, Muhammad bin Qasim became what? He became the governor of Persia, and because of his performance, he was the natural choice for the conquest of Sindh. Now, how did the conquest of Sindh, what happened, what resulted in the conquest of Sindh? In order to consolidate the Umayyad rule, the Umayyad Caliphate had to stop the rebels and the pirates of Sindh who were under protection of the ruler of the Sindh, his name was Raja Tahir. So basically, they were pirates around that particular route, and they regularly looted and plundered all the ships on the route of South Asia and Southeast Asia. We've already talked about the Muslim Arab traders in these routes, and how they regularly traded with the coastal areas in South Asia. And these pirates in Sindh, they would loot and plunder, and they were under the protection of Raja Dahir. So in 707 AD, one of the ships carrying the wives of who were the widows and the children of they were Muslim traders. They were looted and they were held captive, and when they were taken hostage. The Hajjaj bin Yusuf, who was the governor of the Eastern Province, and he was under the Umayyad Caliphate, he demanded for the safe return of all the captives that were taken, and Raja Dahir categorically denied any of his involvement in this particular issue, and he said that he did not support these, and he had no power over these pirates, which only meant that the conflict would eventually occur, and this led to this made the entire operation inevitable. So then the conquest of Sindh happened. Muhammad bin Qasim, as we have already talked about, he was the natural choice. So Muhammad bin Qasim was sent along with 6,000 Syrian army cavalry and 6,000 camel force. And he was also joined by 3,000 other 3,000 camels along with the local troops who joined, who were under the protection of the ruler of Makran, who was also against Raja Dahir. And Muhammad bin Qasim first captured this is probably a very important date, and it's also asked in MCQs. He first captured Daibul, which is said to be the first permanent foothold of Muslims in South Asia. Which is considered first permanent Muslim foothold for Muslims in South Asia? Daibul, Daibul, Daibul. So, and then he captured Neeram, he captured Brahmanabad, all of these. And in 712 AD, in the same year, he met Raja Dahir at Raur, which is the old name for Rohri. And it was there he defeated Raja Dahir. And he took control over Sindh, he took control over Raja Dahir's territory. And then but this was not the end of his expedition. Muhammad bin Qasim and his forces, they moved along the Indus, and they moved towards two cities. One was Arod and the other was Multan. And then one of his other famous, so he also captured the fortress of Sikka that is along the river Ravi. And while he did face resistance, against the ruler of Multan, who was a non-Muslim, who was a Hindu ruler, he did face resistance during, but eventually he captured Multan as well. So it was during his brief tenure, we will talk about how he was as a ruler during his brief tenure. Is it clear up till now? Okay. So now we'll move to the spread of Islam and Muhammad bin Qasim, how he was as an administrator, and how the first what was the first establishment of Muslim rule like in this particular area. So following the capture of the capital of Sindh in 93 Hijri, which we have talked about in 712 AD, of which was the capital of Sindh? Multan was the capital of Sindh, by the way. Multan was part of the Sindh during that time. Muhammad bin Qasim, what he did after capturing Sindh, he invited all the lords, all the nobles, everyone, all the important people in Sindh to accept Islam. And many of the local people, especially the Buddhists, they flocked towards the deen, when not only because they found inspiration in the teachings, but also because they saw the practical manifestation of Islam in form of the Arabs. I also want to add a bit of disclaimer here. Most of the times, a lot of students, because history is a controversial issue, a lot of people say that it is written from the perspective of the majority. But Indo-Pak history is, you can objectively comment, or you can state facts, and you should stick to stating facts. However, and I'm not suggesting you should take sides, you should tell how it was, but at the same time you should stick to the popular narrative. And if you are telling the story from the perspective of the Muslims, then you should say it what it was, and not follow. Okay, which book? Okay, yes, I'll suggest the books later on. मैं ये topic खत्म करूं, उसके बाद I'll get back to the book. सही है? Okay. So now during his brief tenure, he invited all the lords or the nobles towards Islam, and then and they flocked towards the deen. And not only because they took inspiration from Islam, but also because they saw the practical manifestation of Islam. And during his brief tenure, Muhammad bin Qasim's policies, specifically towards non-Muslims, were extremely tolerant and lenient. And in this period, he abolished taxes and he imposed jizyas on the non-Muslims. There was complete religious freedom for the non-Muslims, and their spiritual leaders were paid. They were paid, and they received salaries from the administration. And law and order was restored, something that was missing during the period of Raja Dahir. And the pirates were crushed. There was no more looting and plundering. There were a number of mosques and madaris were built, obviously, and Arabic was introduced as the official language. So these are 4 to 5 different points that you can write. A, he invited nobles towards Islam and they flocked towards him. B, his policy was tolerant and lenient, specifically towards non-Muslim. 3, he abolished tax and imposed jizya. 4, the law and order was maintained, and pirates were crushed. 5, a number of mosques and madaris were built. 6, there was complete religious freedom. Specifically, there were salaries for the religious leaders of other faiths. And 7, Arabic was introduced as the official language in the area, and Arabic was for the very first time was introduced. So Muhammad bin Qasim planned to move forward jizya. So okay, so jizya is basically a tax. I'm sure you'll study in Islamiyat as well. Jizya is a tax that is specifically for designed for non-Muslim. I might not go into detail right now, but it is a tax that used to that was imposed during the caliphate, even in Khulafai Rashidin's era as well. And it's far less imposed on non-Muslims. Yes, it is imposed on non-Muslims. It is far less than the tax, or it is far less than zakat as well. So rather than it's not something that, it's not a price that they have to pay because of being non-Muslims, or it is not unfair to them. But we've recently heard about ISIS and how they're imposing jizya and all, and it is portrayed in negative light. However, if you look at Sharia and if you look at the history, especially the history of Khulafai Rashidin, you would know exactly for their protection in return. Yes, so for their protection, and because they would be given equal rights as citizens of the Islamic State, they had to give the jizya. So yeah, initially it was introduced this way, and this was introduced by many other, not only caliphates in that era, but also by other Muslim leaders after that. So what happened to Muhammad bin Qasim? We know that his tenure was very brief. Why? When he wanted to move further, and especially towards Punjab, what happened was that he was called back, and there was a new caliph. Who was the old caliph? Walid bin Abdul Malik. Remember, I mentioned him before. Now his brother Sulaiman bin Abdul Malik replaced him, and he I'm sorry for interruption. So Sulaiman Abdul Malik, can you hear me? Can everyone hear me? Okay. Sulaiman Abdul Malik replaced him, and he called him back. And under unfortunate circumstances, you don't need to go into detail how he died. You can just mention that he died. He was killed by his own countrymen, his own army, and it under unfortunate circumstances. And although his early demise, he didn't get enough time to rule and to set any precedent. However, this does not necessarily taint his legacy as the first person, as the most famous Islamic victory in the region. And it paved the path for all the future leaders, as well as the conquest that would occur after Muhammad bin Qasim. So all the future endeavors of Umayyad and Abbasid Caliphate that were led by Muhammad bin Qasim, who was one of the first people in that particular area. Now, the next, okay, so there were, मैं थोड़े से question भी answer करना चाहूँगी before I move towards the next topic. Is there any confusion? Because it's the first class, so I want you to, and if anyone has a question, they can open up their mic. They can open up their mic and ask me the question. Because yeah. Okay, should I move forward or should I answer the questions right now? Or maybe I should answer the questions about books, etc. later on at the end of the class, okay? Okay, now, before we move on to the next person, who was the most famous person, or who was one of the most famous conquerors in the region at that time, especially one of the most famous Central Asian conquerors, Mahmud Ghaznavid, who came into power in 998. So we know that Muhammad bin Qasim was killed in 715 AD. He conquered Sindh in 712. And then he was killed just 3 years after that. He was really young when he conquered Sindh. And there was a significant period, almost 2 to 3 centuries in the middle, before Mahmud Ghaznavid conquered or attacked South Asia. So in the middle of that, we know that there was a power shift from Umayyad Caliphate to Abbasid Caliphate, and in around 750 AD, there was a shift between both of, there was the major shift in power. Secondly, what else do we see in the region is that we saw that there was a power shift in terms of how Baghdad had the stronghold over South Asia. And even after Muhammad bin Qasim's demise, is areas such as Sindh and Multan were still under the stronghold of Baghdad. And in the beginning of the 9th century, that is around, I will confirm the date. So in 819 AD, the rise of Samanid Empire was seen. So Samanid Empire is not that important of a topic, but we'll study about it briefly. Samanid Empire was the first native Persian empire after the Arab conquest of the Persia. So it might not be directly related to the Indo-Pak region, but it's important to know about the Muslim empires because we are, as I mentioned before, we are studying it from the Muslim perspective, or the perspective of the Muslim presence in South Asia, and all of the Muslims came from either Arab Arabia, or from Central Asia. So we know that the Samanid Empire was the first native Persian empire, which was Muslim, and it came first native Persian empire after the Arab conquest, and the rise began around 819 AD. And we also saw that by the end of the 9th century, which was 871 AD, we saw that Multan and Sindh took independence from Baghdad, and they started to function as independent states, whereas Multan came under control of Karmathians or Karmathian Empire, and that happened in 871 AD. We also saw by a few years later, around 874 AD, that Bukhara emerged as one of the leading, it emerged as a political and a cultural center. And by the time of 10th century, that was in 900s, we saw the decline in the Samanid Empire. And that is where the story of Mahmud Ghaznavi starts. So basically, Samanid Empire, what you would ask, what is the connection between the Samanid Empire and Mahmud Ghaznavi? And that is where we go to the introduction of Mahmud Ghaznavi. We know that we have studied about how the Umayyads ruled and the Abbasids ruled this region, and how all about the Arab conquest in the region. But the Arab conquest paved the way for the Muslim rulers to come to Central Asia, and they followed Arab invasions in the region. And how Ghaznavids made their own dynasty. It was because of this one man, and who was the ancestor of Mahmud Ghaznavi, and his name was Alp-Taghin. Alp-Taghin was basically a Turkic slave guard. He belonged to Central Asia. So he was of Turkic descent, and he was a Turkic slave guard and he belonged to the Samanid Empire. He was a slave. And after the death of his patron, which was in year 1962. So after his death, he left the Samanid Empire and he established the city-state of Ghazni, which used to be part of the Samanid Empire. But as we know that by the end of the 10th century, or during the 10th century, it was decline of the Samanid Empire. So it was easy for him to capture that particular area and to form a city-state of Ghazni. He died in 977 AD, and he was followed by his son-in-law, whose name was Subukhtagin. Subukhtagin ruled for almost 20 years, and from 977 till 997, and he was followed by Mahmud of Ghazna, or who we famously call Mahmud Ghaznavi. During the Subukhtagins period, their rule was limited to the city-state of Ghazni. However, he did transform Ghazni into a strong military and political power in the region. And after that, when Mahmud Ghaznavi came into the power, now we are focusing on Mahmud Ghaznavi, who was a very important conqueror in the region. He declared independence. He officially declared independence. So he was the one Ghaznavid dynasty was established by Subuktigin. He is the one, Mahmud Ghaznavi is the one who officially declared independence from Samanids, and he decided to expand the empire. He was one of the first people who, from the Ghaznavid empire, who wanted to expand the empire. ठीक है? Am I audible? मेरी आवाज आ रही है सबको? Okay. Okay, so they're done. Okay, say. Okay. So we know, now we go back a little bit. So this was the introduction of Mahmud Ghaznavi and his family. His grandfather was Altagin, then Subuktigin. I'm repeating myself consistently so that all of those people who are attending the classes, they could like memorize it right here, right now. It is easy for you that way. Here we go back a little bit, and we it's just that Mahmud Ghaznavi was born in 1979, and when his father passed away, Subuktigin, he inherited it. He is famously known as he is not only one of the greatest conquerors of South Asia, but he's a very controversial figure as well. We'll talk about this later. And it's something that is very famous about him is that he is never defeated in a battle. And he built an empire that lasted for almost a century. So about his military campaigns, Mahmud Ghaznavi was one of the most successful generals in his time. And his major expedition, or one of the most famous military campaign was of that against Shahi Raja Jaipal. So Shahi Raja Jaipal belonged to Hindu Shahi dynasty. It was a very famous dynasty. And a little bit history about Shahi Raja Jaipal. It wasn't the very first time that Shahi Raja Jaipal went into war against Ghaznavid Empire. In fact, Shahi Raja Jaipal was one of those people who attacked Ghazni even before that, when they entered South Asia. When the Ghaznavids entered South Asia, he had already attacked Ghazni, and during Subuktigin's era. And when he went into a war against Subuktigin, he was caught, and eventually he was freed only because he promised that he would pay a ransom. Rather than paying the ransom, he went into the battle with Ghaznavids again. And this time when he was caught, he was forced to pay a very heavy ransom in form of 2 cities which he controlled. One was Peshawar and other was Langham. Okay. So when Mahmud Ghaznavi came into power, he was aware about how these Rajas were constantly conspiring against Ghazni. So he decided that when he took power, he would attack these Rajas. So Shahi Raja Jaipal prepared a huge army and he attacked him, and his attack was forced Mahmud Ghaznavi to give all attention to India. So again, when Mahmud Ghaznavi came into power, Shahi Raja Jaipal decided to attack him again. And this time, Mahmud Ghaznavi was forced to attack India, and he attacked India 17 times, 17 different occasions. So there were a number of expeditions, there were a number of different military campaigns during his period. I think from 2011 to 2025, I have to confirm again. I think from 2011 till 2030, there were almost 17 different battles that were fought by Mahmud Ghaznavi. And they were different expeditions. 2 to 3 of them we'll mention in detail. The first one we have already talked about was against Shahi Raja Jaipal, and he was defeated in the battle. He was succeeded by Anandapal, who was his son. And then eventually Mahmud Ghaznavi went into a war against his grandson, whose name was Tarnul Chalpal. We'll come back to it later on. 1001 AD mein, he defeated Shahi Raja Jaipal. Then one other major attack that we will, I'll mention again, which was in 1017 AD. This was a very controversial attack, which is obviously, portrayed as an attack on any other religion, and it was controversial. This was attack on Jamna Bhumi temple, and it took place in 1017 AD. So there are certain critiques of Mahmud Ghaznavi that hold the opinion that the attack on Jamna Bhumi, there were certain critiques that say that the attack on Jamna Bhumi temple, this is a very popular notion that Mahmud Ghaznavi was a looter and a plunderer among non-Muslims. However, there also, on the other side of the spectrum, there are people who hold the opinion that the attack on Jamna Bhumi temple was actually, not just an act of looting and plundering, but it was inevitable because these temples were stronghold of the Hindu military or the military of the Rajas at that time. So this was one major attack that became controversial. That was in 1017 AD. That was in Jamna Bhumi temple. It was followed by what I mentioned before, the annexation of Punjab. That is the defeat of Tarnol Chalpal, who was the grandson of whom? He was the grandson of Shahi Raja Jaipal. So Shahi Raja Jaipal was defeated. His son succeeded. He also went into war. And Anandapal. And then his son, Anandapal's son, Tarnol Chalpal, he was also defeated. And eventually, in year 1028, Hindu Shahi dynasty was completely destroyed. It came into end by the assassination of Bhimpal. Is it clear? Okay, so I missed a very major event. Firstly, I'll go back to it. First, one of the first major expedition was going to war against Shahi Raja Jaipal. That was in 1001 AD. Then it was followed by a lot of major events, which I'll give you timeline, you can memorize that. But जो बहुत important है, वो मैं आपको mention कर रही हूँ. The first one was about Shahi Raja Jaipal. That was in 1001 AD. And you can mention about Anandapal, who succeeded him. And then the controversial attack on Jamna Bhumi temple, that happened in 1017 AD. And then in 1021 AD, the attack on... So the attack on the defeating Tarnol Chalpal, who was the grandson of Shahi Raja Jaipal, and in 1021 AD, and that is how he annexed the Punjab. And then another controversial attack, that we have all heard and read about, that happened in 1025 AD, 1025 AD, in the attack on Somnath temple, which resulted in the killing of 50,000 soldiers. So a lot of people again mark it as an act of violence, and obviously because he is labeled as a conqueror by most of the people, non-Muslims in the region, and they might have their own point of view. However, because he was a conqueror and this was expected from him, and he was going to a war against these people, so this controversy, all of these actions of Mahmud Ghaznavi, they do make him a controversial leader. However, it does not take away from him the fact that he was one of the first people to establish a Muslim rule in northern India. He was very successful in it. One of the reasons why he became controversial was the religious nature of all of his expeditions. And he was a deeply religious man. Now we'll briefly tell about what kind of a person he was. So Mahmud Ghaznavi was a deeply religious man, and he has famously written a lot of books of fiqh. And however, a lot of his supporters say that he did have a tolerant behavior, and all of this is a propaganda. You don't necessarily have to mention that all of this is propaganda against him. I mean, he did conquer South Asia, but you can mention that he did have that he only attacked. Okay, yeah, that he only attacked. So he was labeled as a looter and plunderer. However, from the other side of point of view, that the other point of view was that he had to conquer because he was being attacked. So we have also mentioned about Shahi Raja Jaipal and how he consistently attacked, and that made him look towards expanding the empire, because at that time war used to be one of the only people. It was way before capitalism, so war was inevitable. When there were empires, when there were rulers, the war was inevitable, and wars were everywhere. So this could be a counter narrative if someone would point out that why did he conquer, why did he go. So expansionism is basically, it is grounded in this philosophy that war used to be inevitable for money. and for resources, obviously. But at the same time, a lot of his supporters say that he was a deeply religious man and he had tolerant behavior. In fact, he also had non-Muslims within his army and under his rule as well. So the demise of Mahmud Ghaznavi happened in 1030 AD. I think we should hurry up as well because it was an introductory class. We will definitely increase our speed, and I'll I'll have a clearer idea about how much all of you are what is your understanding of this particular subject and what should be my speed. So anyways, after the attack on Somnath's temple, it was in 1028 AD, he defeated Bhimpal, who was the last ruler of Hindu Shahi dynasty. And it was in 1030 AD, he eventually passed away. Mahmud Ghaznavi passed away. And so there was this, after Mahmud Ghaznavi, there were almost 15 different rulers were there. And they were, in total, there were 18 Ghaznavid rulers. And if we look at it, Mahmud Ghaznavi was the third Ghaznavid ruler, right? And after him, there were 15 different rulers that came after him. However, none of them were as powerful and as successful in their campaigns as Mahmud Ghaznavi was. So immediately after that, after Mahmud Ghaznavi's demise, the Ghaznavis lost their vigor and their zeal, and they started to focus more on Lahore, Multan, and Peshawar, and especially they started to weaken when they moved their capital to Lahore. And we also know that Ghaznavids ruled till 12th century, and they were eventually replaced by whom? They were replaced by Ghorids. And there were 18 Ghaznavid rulers. The last Ghaznavid ruler was Bahram Shah, and the entire dynasty ended in 1186. Okay. So 1186 was when the Ghaznavid dynasty officially ended. However, it started to weaken way before that, and now we will. But we will focus on, because we've already talked how it weakened. Now we'll focus on the achievements during the period of Ghaznavids. So during the Ghaznavid era, Arabic was replaced by Persian. Secondly, the law of the state was Sharia. This was a new thing. And the rule, everyone who was under the rule, they were bound to follow it. Then economic, political, and religious institutions were developed by the Muslims, and Urdu was introduced, and it became popular among the Muslims. So these are a few points which focus on, because most of the time, during most of his era, Mahmud Ghaznavi focused on the expeditions. So many of the times people do not focus on the administrative rule, his administrative role. But these were certain changes that he made during his rule, especially in making Persian language popular. We know that Mahmud Ghaznavi died in 1030, right? And it wasn't until 1186 that Ghaznavid dynasty ended. However, around 1042, the tussle between Ghorids and Ghaznavid, Ghorid local people, they were under the rule of Ghaznavid dynasty. They were from the city of Ghor, which is in modern day Afghanistan. Okay. तो इन लोगों के बीच में, in between Ghorids and Ghaznavid, the tussle started in 1142. सही है? ये जो मैं आपको dates बता रही हूँ, these are extra dates. They might not be like necessary, like they're not super important, but they could like give you an idea about, the history, and they're important, obviously. Or I'll forward the timeline to you as well. So where was I? Okay, yeah. So the tussle between both Ghorids and the Ghaznavid locals, it started in 1149, and in 1152, Alauddin, who was who was a Ghorid leader, he basically he sacked Ghazna and he set it ablaze. So that is when the conflict between the Ghorids and the Ghaznavid started, and it reached its peak during that period in 1152. Then it was followed, his son, his name was Saifuddin. It was his son in 1161 that succeeded the Ghorid leader. And then in 1163, Ghiyasuddin. So the first person was, his name was Alauddin, Ghorid leader tha wo. He set ablaze Ghazna in 1152. And 1169, his son's name was Saifuddin. He became the Ghorid leader. And in 1163, Ghiyasuddin, who was Ghiyasuddin? Ghiyasuddin was the nephew of Alauddin. He became the Ghorid leader. He was the one who eventually established the Ghorid Empire. Basically, Ghiyasuddin Muhammad is a very important person in the history of Ghaznavid, or in the history of the Ghorid dynasty. ठीक है ना? So I'm telling you the background of the Ghorid dynasty before I start focusing on the Ghorid dynasty itself. सही है? ये background आपको समझ में आ गया सबको? Everyone clear? Alauddin was the first person. He was followed by his son in 1163. And then in 1161, in 1163, he was followed by his nephew, Alauddin's nephew. His name was Ghiyasuddin. He became the ruler. And after 10 years after that, in 1173, Ghiyasuddin managed to capture Ghazna, and this was beginning of the end of the Ghaznavid Empire. They captured Ghazna and they established their rule there, and it was officially under the rule of Ghorid Empire. Say, after during 11, okay. In the same year, Shahabuddin handed over Ghazna to his brother, who was, as we know, he was Shahab. So, sorry, I got a bit confused. Okay, yeah. Ghiyasuddin handed over the rule, his Ghazna to his brother. His name was Shahabuddin. Okay. And then he became the governor of Ghazna, and that is how the rule of Ghorid started from Ghazna. That was the year 1173. Is it clear? अभी तक जो मैंने story सुनाई है सबको समझ में आ रही है? Everyone is clear? Acha, please, all of you people who are listening, don't get confused that why am I telling you it in the form of stories? You will get notes, and you will get PPT of it. And we'll also discuss how you will attempt the questions in the past papers, or kitne frequently is topic pe questions aate hain ya nahi aate hain. ठीक है ना? So please don't get confused that why is she ranting about the dates and what happened first and second. It's just that there is no other way to learn history. Okay, you need to learn the events chronologically. Either you can learn the events chronologically कि इस साल ये हुआ, उसके बाद साल ये हुआ, उसके बाद इस साल ये हुआ, or either you can focus on empires. So what I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to use both of these methodologies, the one from year to year and focusing on the empires as well. इसलिए मैं आपको बैक स्टोरी पहले बताई है, और अब हम गौरिड एम्पायर के ऊपर आएंगे, जो कि मेन टॉपिक है गौरिड एम्पायर. अभी तक हमने मोहम्मद बिन कासिम के बारे में बात की, इनिशियल ईयर्स की बात की, अर्ली मुस्लिम इन्वेजन्स में सारे आ जाते हैं. मोहम्मद बिन कासिम के बारे में बात की, बगदाद के बारे में बात की, समनिद एम्पायर के बारे में बात की, गजनविड एम्पायर के बारे में बात की. अब हम जिस एम्पायर के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं उसका नाम है गौरिड एम्पायर, और इनका इम्पैक्ट, देयर इम्पैक्ट इज फार ग्रेटर, every other empire that will come. Obviously, the past empires left a legacy to be followed, but every other coming empire would actually leave a greater mark in the history, especially when it comes to the legacy of the Muslim rulers and their heritage in India. Okay, so the Ghorid dynasty officially started in 1160, 1161 during this period. And if we give the introduction of the early history, most of the people did give credit to Muhammad bin Qasim for the conquest of Sindh, and Mahmud Ghaznavi for the annexation of Punjab, which was huge during that period. However, that resulted in the spread of Islam in this North Indian region. However, it was Shahabuddin Ghori who actually established the Muslim rule in the region, and he had a huge impact in the history of India. And when after the capture of Ghazni, as we've talked about in 1173 by Shahabuddin's brother, his name was Ghiyasuddin, and he was the nephew of Alauddin, who initiated, or who was one of the first leaders of the Ghorid who had this strong impact. So Ghiyasuddin handed over Ghazni, and he made Shahabuddin Ghori, Shahabuddin Ghori, the governor of Ghazni. Okay, so Shahabuddin, what kind of a person was Shahabuddin? Shahabuddin was an ambitious person, and as soon as he got into power, he planned to attack all the states, especially those which were under the rule of Ghaznavids in South Asia, because they've already controlled Ghazni, right? So they wanted to capture, and Ghaznavids were towards their end, and they were extremely vulnerable during this time. So they wanted to attack South Asia. So he started his expedition after ruling 1173. ये dates बहुत important है, तो इसको गौर से सुन लीजिएगा, पढ़ भी लीजिएगा obviously, but अभी आप सुनेंगे तो आपको समझ में आ जाएगा. 1173, after 1173, in 1175, it was the first time he invaded subcontinent, and he came through Gomal Pass. And during that time, he successfully occupied Multan and Uch region. Multan and Uch, you must be familiar with both of these names. These are from Pakistan, modern day Pakistan. But he failed to capture Gujarat. He then again attacked the territories of Ghaznavid Empire. This time he entered through Khyber Pass, not from Gomal Pass, but from Khyber Pass. He captured Peshawar in 1179, Sialkot in 1185, and Lahore in 1186. 1173, he became the governor. Then he eventually became the ruler, obviously. And because he ruled Ghazni, he then attacked India for the first time in 1175. He entered through Gomal Pass. He took control over Uch and Multan, and he failed to capture Gujarat. And then he again attacked Ghaznavid territories. This time he entered through Khyber Pass. He successfully captured Peshawar in 1175, in 1179, Sialkot in 1185, and Lahore in 1186. After invading the Ghaznavid territories, he knew and he gained a lot of confidence. So he decided to fight against the local rulers that were the Hindu Rajputs. And this is one of the most famous battles of Mahmud Shahabuddin Ghori, and which is the Battle of Tarain. So there were two Battle of Tarains. One was fought in 1191 and the other was fought in 1192. मैं बहुत ज्यादा स्पीड में तो नहीं जा रही, आप सबको समझ में आ रहा है जो मैं पढ़ा रही हूँ? Okay. So in 1191, how Battle of Tarain came into being, how it occurred. So Shahabuddin Ghori, okay, good, thank you, Ahmed. So Shahabuddin Ghori, basically he conquered Bhatinda, which belonged to the Chauhans, who were Hindu Rajputs. And after conquering it, he decided to go back to Ghazni. But Prithvi Raj Chauhan, who was the ruler of the Rajputs and who controlled the land of Bhatinda, he was informed and he marched towards Bhatinda to rescue his land and to defend his land. And both of these forces met at Bhatinda, met at the Tarain, where the first Battle of Tarain happened. And Prithvi Raj Chauhan's army defeated Shahabuddin Ghori's army, and he was forced to go back to Ghazni. When he went back to Ghazni, he planned to attack Bhatinda again, and this time they had the second Battle of Tarain the very next year. This was fought in 1192, and he prepared. He prepared to conquer Bhatinda, which was, and the second time he eventually won the battle. And not only this battle is extremely famous, but it also paved the path, and it gave extreme confidence to the forces of Shahabuddin Ghori, and it opened the gates for new opportunities for him to conquer. So the expansion of the Ghorid dynasty happened. So we first talked about the introduction. We talked about him and his attacks, first initial attacks on India, and then the Battle of Tarains. ये सारा कुछ discuss हो गया. अब हम move करते हैं towards expansion of Ghorid dynasty. So basically, expansion of Ghorid dynasty was that he, one by one, he defeated majority of the Rajput clans in the region. He captured Badaun and Oudh in the same in the same year in 1192 and 1193, I'm not sure, I'll check in later and I'll tell you. मैं notes दूंगी तो उसमें confirm लिखा होगा. 1192 and 1193 में he captured Badaun and Oudh. Then he went on and he captured Kannauj and Banaras in 1194, and 1195 में he captured Gwalior and Bayana. Achha, one of the most famous people that belonged to the not only Ghorid dynasty but also the Ghorid army was Qutbuddin Aibak. Qutbuddin Aibak was one of the most trusted lieutenants of Ghori, and he, in 1196, he was the one who captured Delhi on behalf of the Ghorid dynasty or Ghorid army. And because of his success, he was made the governor of Delhi, and he was the first Muslim governor of Delhi. He became the governor in which year? In 1196. Ghori then appointed another of his slaves, his name was Bakhtiar Khilji, as to look after Oudh. When he was looking after Oudh, he collected revenue from this region and created his own army. And from that army, small force that eventually captured Bengal and Assam. So look where we started from. We started from Ghazni, and then slowly and gradually he started to capture all the lands of Ghaznavid territory that were already vulnerable. He defeated not only the Rajput clans from the other North Indian states, but also he eventually moved towards east of India, which is Bengal and Assam. So uski jo force ke log the, people under him who were basically the slave guards, we'll move towards it when we'll study slave dynasty. So one of his lieutenants, who was famous lieutenant Qutbuddin Aibak, became the governor of Delhi, and other Bakhtiar Khilji became the governor of Bengal and Assam because they conquered it. Now the assassination, the end of Shahabuddin Ghori. The assassination of Shahabuddin Ghori took place in 1206. That was the end of his power, and this was also the end of the Ghorid dynasty itself, because in 1206, while traveling to Lahore to crush a revolt in the region, he around the area of Damak, which is near the present day Jhelum, he was assassinated, and he was offering a prayer, and he was assassinated like that. And according to his wishes, he was buried where he fell. So now we'll discuss about the rule and the legacy of Shahabuddin Ghori. The Muslim rule established by Shahabuddin Ghori did not only created or paved a path for all the future Muslim rulers to come in the region and to rule there, but the rule itself lasted for more than 7 centuries. And whether it was in the form of the Delhi Sultanate, which we will study later on, but also it itself was the fact that he was so successful, and the fact that he managed to expand his dynasty his success rate was so inspiring in a way that he managed to expand his particular army, his particular dynasty in such a short period of time. It paved the path for all the future Muslim dynasties and all the future Muslim leaders and conquerors to come. So Ghori ruled South Asia like no other Muslim ruler before. He expanded the very small empire from a Ghazni state in 1173, and in just 30 years' time, his empire, Ghori's empire, was till Bengal and Assam. And he moved further east, then towards Bengal. As we've already mentioned, he was a brave soldier, and not only he was a brave soldier, but he was an empire builder. And he his rule led to the formation of the 5 dynasties. So these 5 dynasties are very important, and these 5 dynasties are also called as Delhi Sultanate, okay, and which would rule Delhi until the Mughals arrived. So is there anything in the lecture so far that you don't understand? Okay. Is there any questions? Okay, let me see the questions, because I'm okay. Which version of the history is correct? Is it truth in between? Some say he was a good person, some say he was a looter, some goes for. Okay, so this is exactly what I mentioned in the middle. If you were listening, I'll say it again. No problem. Muhammad bin Qasim is termed as a looter and someone who won't agree with the fact that Muslims conquered South Asia. That someone would be obviously a popular narrative among the non-Muslims here. And I have respect for all the narratives. It's just that when you're writing in exams, you will follow the popular narrative. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be objective and you should just focus on like आप सीधे पढ़ना शुरू कर रहे हैं मुसलमानों के और बहुत ज्यादा तारीफें कर लें. You should remain objective and you should use facts. And I would also suggest कि आप ऐसी podcast और ऐसे historical writers को mention करें जो कि जिन्होंने उस era के बारे में अच्छा लिखा हुआ है और articles भी पढ़ें. Obviously one should write, yes, one should write from all the narratives. I agree completely. You should mention the narrative. जैसे हमने पहले mention किया कि Mahmud Ghaznavi was controversial because of, a lot of people from the non-Muslims believe that. A lot of people also believe that the attack was inevitable. तो आप दोनों चीजों को mention कर सकते हैं. You don't necessarily have to vilify any individual. You don't have to vilify any non-Muslim. You don't have to vilify any Muslim. You just have to state the facts, what happened and why it happened, because the facts do remain same. Although we know Muslim school of thought, exactly. You can say that. You can say that. Then you don't necessarily have to say Hindu school of thought. You can mention Hindu school of thought. You can say the non-Muslim perspective is completely different from the Muslim perspective. Yes, if there is a question, हम questions इंशाल्लाह next class में discuss करेंगे. आज class बहुत slow चली है. मुझे खुद अंदाजा नहीं हो रहा था किस तरह से जो है वो time जा रहा है, क्योंकि history पढ़ाने के अंदर आपको you need to be more interactive. So I expected कि interactive होगा session, but ये कि चूंकि मैं Zoom पे पढ़ा रही हूँ और हम सवाल इस तरह से नहीं ले सकते, so इसलिए जो है I'm asking you the question. So खैर anyways you can write from all the perspectives. You should be respectful. और अच्छा book में जो हूँ, I think we should continue. What we can do, should I start with Delhi Sultanate? Or should I continue with that? Because अभी 20-25 minutes रह गए, तो मैं थोड़ा सा आपको briefly बता सकती हूँ, and we can cover Mamluk dynasty, the first dynasty, and then we can continue with it in the next class, because I was sure that this topic wouldn't be covered in one class, obviously, and inshallah in the next class we'll manage time in a far better way, and obviously I'll have my laptop and my PPT in front of me, so I'll be able to explain it in a better way, and it would be easier for me. Okay, yeah, so books, अब चूंकि हम सवाल मैं questions ले ही रही हूँ तो मैं आंसर कर देती हूँ. तो पहला क्वेश्चन तो आपको समझ में आ गया होगा कि पॉपुलर नैरेटिव्स के साथ जाएं, बी रिस्पेक्टफुल, बी ऑब्जेक्टिव. आप मेंशन कर दें दोनों चीजें, बट यू शुडंट विलिफाई एनी पर्टिकुलर ऑब्जेक्टिव, एंड पर्सपेक्टिव से लिखें पॉपुलर पर्सपेक्टिव की वजह से. बिल्कुल इसी तरह ऑथर्स भी वही पढ़ें जो कि पॉपुलर हों, और बहुत क्लीशे लगता है हमें, बट authors like William Dalrymple, he's a very famous author, and you don't necessarily have to read all his books, but I would recommend his books. Yes, you should cover 1 or 2 topics in each lecture. Okay, in lectures, yes. I will listen to your recommendations about it, but obviously because we have 12 sessions and we have 10 topics, and obviously all of these topics before partition are, they are more important. Obviously the history will be till 1999. They will also cover the political history of Pakistan and the constitutional history, all of that within the syllabus. It is part of the syllabus in our classes. However, I am focusing on this era because the dates and the period is far more confusing. Because it was an introductory class, so obviously I have to, I have to mention all of these things in details. Book जो मैं recommend करूँगी, मैंने personally कोई particular book Indo-Pak history, because I didn't have a lot of time to prepare. So I had read Pakistan, a Hard Country by Anatol Levin. ये book मैंने पढ़ी थी, ये that helped me a lot in IR and Pakistan affairs. That was written in 2011 or 12, तो उसका थोड़ा सा perspective थोड़ा मुख्तलिफ होगा as compared to something that you would read in 2022. Obviously, a lot has changed in the past decade. Another book for Indo-Pak history specifically would be Stanley Wolpert's book about Jinnah. And that was a really good book. And yeah. Okay. Stanley Wolpert की book है Jinn of Pakistan. I think Jinn of Pakistan नाम है, yeah. So I have the book. I've read it. और जब मैं अपनी written exams के लिए preparation कर रही थी तो मैंने वो पढ़ी थी. Anatole Levin की book है Hard. ये मेरे पास रखी हुई है. Hard Country. Pakistan a Hard Country. वो आप पढ़ सकते हैं. Trek to Pakistan is a very famous book and it is recommended by almost all the mentors. और वो history के लिए बहुत अच्छी है. और हिस्ट्री के लिए आई वुड सजेस्ट विकिपीडिया इज वेरी गुड फॉर ऑल हिस्ट्री. चाहे आप IR पढ़ रहे हैं, चाहे आप यूरोपियन हिस्ट्री पढ़ रहे हैं, चाहे आप कोई भी हिस्ट्री पढ़ रहे हैं. रिसर्च पेपर वेबसाइट्स वगैरह जो हैं, रिसर्च पेपर्स तो आपको कंपलसरी सब्जेक्ट्स के लिए ज्यादा अच्छा है. आई वुड सजेस्ट जो ऑप्शनल सब्जेक्ट्स के लिए जो है वो आई थिंक यू शुड स्टिक टू द सिलेबस मोर. एंड ऑब्वियसली इफ यू वांट टू नो मोर कंटेम्प्रेरी नॉलेज आपको गेन करनी है तो आप न्यूज वगैरह देखते रहेंगे. आप आर्टिकल्स पढ़ सकते हैं. कोई भी पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक है उस पर रिलेटेड कोई आर्टिकल ऐसा है, कोई ऐसी पब्लिकेशन है जो कि अच्छी है. आप शॉर्ट वीडियोस देख सकते हैं, ऑनलाइन यूट्यूब पे अवेलेबल होती हैं. मुख्तलिफ चैनल्स हैं, वॉक्स, अल जजीरा, बहुत सारे जो इस तरह के चैनल्स हैं. TRT है, वो लोग मुख्तलिफ वीडियोस जो हैं वो करंट अफेयर से रिलेटेड, IR से रिलेटेड जो है वो शेयर करते रहते हैं. हिस्ट्री से रिलेटेड भी एक पॉडकास्ट ही मेरे जहन में उसका नाम निकल रहा है, पर वो इस्लामिक हिस्ट्री से रिलेटेड बहुत अच्छी जो है वो पॉडकास्ट नहीं, सॉरी, यूट्यूब चैनल था. आई विल डेफिनेटली शेयर इट. और मैं कोशिश करूंगी मैं व्हाट्सएप का ग्रुप भी बना लूं जिसमें जो है आप लोगों को जो भी सजेशन हो, कोई भी क्वेश्चन हो तो आप लोग मुझसे पूछ सकते हैं, ठीक है. और या सो कमिंग बैक टू द लेक्चर टुडे, कोई भी कंफ्यूजन हो, कोई भी क्वेश्चन हो, इसके अलावा प्लीज डिस्कस कर सकते हैं. आई डोंट वांट टू कंटिन्यू विद द रेस्ट ऑफ द लेक्चर बिकॉज बट वी विल स्पीड अप in the coming lectures, inshallah. I'll promise that. It's just that today there has been certain technical issues that have made it really difficult for me to, concentrate well on the lecture. So I'll apologize for that, but obviously I'll continue the class. Should I continue with it? क्योंकि सिर्फ 20 minutes रह गए. Please tell me. I want to know कि अगर आप चाहते हैं कि मैं दिल्ली सल्तनत से कंटिन्यू करूं या should I revise whatever we have started? Because ये जो particular topic है ये 712 AD से लेके 1857 तक है, right? Yes, 18. Muslim rule and heritage in India is a very long topic. तो ये 2 क्लासेस में ही कंप्लीट होगा अगर हम बहुत भी इसको शॉर्ट करने की कोशिश करें तब भी. खैर, okay, I'll start because I didn't get any response. I'll just start with Delhi Sultanate and in the next class I'll revise a bit and then. Okay, revise. Okay, you want us to revise. Okay. So we'll start. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim again. थोड़ा सा Muslim rule and heritage in India हमने start किया. हमने advent of Islam के बारे में बात की. We started with the advent of Islam in Arabia, which started with who spread Islam in the region. And after his demise, he was followed by the caliphs in Palestine, Syria, and Egypt. Contrary to the popular belief, there was relationship between the Arab traders and the South Asians. And when they accepted Islam, many of the Muslim Arab traders were responsible of spreading Islam in the southern coast of the Indian region. Then a little bit about the caliphates. They were the most prominent caliphate after the demise of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in that very century was Umayyad Caliph. During that period, during the conquest of close to that period, that was of the conquest of Sindh, the Caliph ruler was Walid bin Abdul Malik, and his general was we know that Musa bin Nusayr, and his lieutenant was Musa bin Nusayr was responsible of conquering North Africa, and his lieutenant was Tariq bin Ziyad, who ruled Spain. So they had maintained a very strong hold over the Western territories, and it was only a matter of time that they would attack and they would conquer India. And koi bahana milna tha, there had to be some excuse for it, and it was inevitable for the Muslim, specifically Umayyads, to capture, to enter India. And in the past, there were Hazrat Umar and Hazrat Ali's forces had come face to face, and especially in during the conquest in Persia. They came face to face in different came to face to with different rulers in Makran and Kirman. However, they failed to conquer South Asia. But Muhammad bin Qasim managed to conquer South Asia. How? A little bit about Muhammad bin Qasim. He was born in 695 AD. He belonged to Saqafi tribe, and he was that originally belonged to Taif. He was the nephew of Hajjaj bin Yusuf, who was the chief, and he was the governor of Eastern Province, and he became the governor of Persia. And because of his performance in Persia, he became the natural choice for what? He became the natural choice for his the expedition or the conquest of Sindh. Why did conquest of Sindh become inevitable? Because of the pirates of the Sindh. So pirates of the Sindh were the pirates that looted and plundered along the route where the ships of the Muslim traders used to be looted and plundered regularly in this. All the ships were looted and plundered, but Muslim traders also were there. And they were also looted and plundered. And they were supported. In fact, they were supported and they worked along the ruler of that region, whose name was Raja Dahir. And Raja Dahir protected them. So in 707 AD, one of the ships that carried Muslim wives and children was not only looted, but they were held captives. And when Hajjaj bin Yusuf demanded for their safe return, Raja Dahir refused to cooperate, and he said that he had absolutely no control over them. So long story short, this resulted in the conquest of Sindh. Muhammad bin Qasim came along with the 6,000 cavalry and 6,000 camel force, and he was supported by the ruler of Makran that brought 3,000 camel force. They had 5 catapults as well. This is just an extra information that I would give. So they had 5 catapults as well, and they attacked Sindh. The first permanent Muslim foothold in this region was Daibul, and Daibul was captured by Muhammad bin Qasim, and it was followed by Neeram, Brahmanabad, and eventually Raud. Raud is the old name for Rodi, and this is where his forces met Raja Dahir's forces, and Raja Dahir was defeated in 712 AD. This is exactly the date from which Indo-Pak history actually starts, So in 712, he was defeated, and then they captured Neeram, Brahmanabad. The forces of Muhammad bin Qasim moved along the Indus. They captured the fortress of Sikka on the river Ravi, and they finally and eventually captured Multan. Okay, so we know that Muhammad bin Qasim's tenure was very brief, and he ruled briefly. However, this does not taint his legacy, and he was the first person to establish Muslim rule in India, and he invited all the nobles, everyone, all the important people, the lords, and they flocked towards the deen, and not only because of his teachings or the teachings of Islam, but also the practical manifestation of Islam. And he had lenient policy and a tolerant policy specifically towards Muslims, and he brought certain changes, like he abolished taxes and imposed jizya. He introduced Arabic as the official language. He also what else did he did? He gave salaries to the spiritual leaders of other non-Muslims as well, and his policy was obviously very lenient towards he crushed the pirates, and he maintained law and order. Okay, yes. Obviously there are many theories about it. He was killed by his own forces, yes, but the main change that happened was eventually ये administrative changes तो वो लेकर आए सारे यहाँ पे local. उसके बाद when he wanted to expand his empire, but then he was called back. He was called back because there was change in power. Initially कौन था उस वक्त ruler Umayyad Caliphate का? Walid bin Abdul Malik. Then his brother replaced. His name was Suleiman bin Abdul Malik, and he was killed by his forces. So there are a lot of, you don't need to go into detail of how he was killed and why he was killed, but he was killed, and you should just mention that it was quite unfortunate. However, this does not taint his legacy, and what he did, because he was one of the first person. So that paved the path for all the other Umayyad and Abbasid caliphate that would eventually rule. So between the period from Mahmud Ghaznavi, that was in 997, 998, and 715 when Muhammad bin Qasim was killed. There were 2 to 3 centuries in which there was a shift of change from Umayyad Caliphate to Abbasid Caliphate that came into rule. Then in 819, the first Persian native empire by the name of Samanid Empire rose into power. It was during this time, Baghdad also was the center of the power, and Baghdad ruled over the land of Sindh and Multan. Then in 874, there was the rise of Bukhara as well as the political and cultural center. And around 10th century, 900s, the decline of Samanid happened. One of the Samanid Turk-Slavic general, whose name was Alptagin, left the Samanid Empire close to that time in 10th century. And in 1962, he left after the death of his patron, and he went on and he freed the city of Ghazni, and he established the state of Ghazni. And he was one of the ancestors of Mahmud Ghaznavid. Alptagin, after the death of Alptagin in 1977, Subukhtagin took power. Subukhtagin was the son-in-law of Alptagin. He ruled for 20 years. He established a very strong city-state, and he transformed the Ghazni into a military and political power. He was followed by, Subukhtagin was followed by his son, whose name was Mahmud Ghaznavid. Mahmud Ghaznavid came into power in 1997. He was one of the most famous conquerors, as well as he was a very controversial figure because of the religious nature of his expeditions. Okay, we have only 10 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to be quick. Okay, where were we? Yes, Mahmud Ghaznavid was a controversial figure because of the religious nature of his military campaigns. So in 1997, 998 AD, he took power, and in one of his, he attacked South Asia 17 times. He had 17. He attacked South Asia 17 times, 17 battles. And what was very famous about him is that he never lost any battle. Famous expeditions पे आ जाएं, famous military campaigns पे आ जाएं, तो in 1001 AD, he defeated Shahi Raja Jaipal. Shahi Raja Jaipal की history में जाएं, तो he attacked them before as well. Subukhtagin he attacked when Subukhtagin was in power twice before that, and when Mahmud Ghaznavid came into power, he attacked them again, and this time he was defeated for good. And this led to the Mahmud Ghaznavid's attention towards South Asia, and which forced him to focus on the Rajas, the conspiring Rajas there. Basically, this was from the Mahmud Ghaznavid's narrative. So then he moved on, and there were many other military campaigns. There are two controversial campaigns. One was the controversial attack on Jamnabhoomi temple in Mathura, and it was labeled as inevitable because it was claimed to be the center of Hindu military at that time. However, many non-Muslims labeled Ghaznavid as a looter and plunderer. Few years after that, in 1021 AD, Mahmud Ghaznavid attacked, or he went into war against Tarnul Chalpal. Tarnul Chalpal was the grandson of Shahi Raja Jaipal, and he not only defeated them, but he also annexed Punjab, which was the turning point in the history. And after 3 years after that, in 1025 AD, he also attacked Somnath temple, which we've also read in Urdu, Somnath Ka Mandir or his Pura attack. It is also deemed extremely controversial by a lot of writers because they feel that almost 50,000 people were killed. However, it was considered as a center for many, for the Hindu military regime at that time. And it was also considered inevitable. Apart from being a controversial figure, he had a tilt towards Islam that made him a very religious person. And he not only conquered and he went into battle against non-Muslims, which was the controversial part, but he said that he was very lenient and tolerant towards the non-Muslims. And he also wrote a lot of books on fiqh. And So where were we? So yeah, in 1025, in 1028, he went into war against Bhimpal, who was the last ruler of Hindu Shahi dynasty. In 1030, he died. And it wasn't until 1186 when Ghaznavid Empire completely ended. However, after Mahmud Ghaznavi, 15 rulers came after Mahmud Ghaznavi. Last one of them was Bahram Shah, but none of them was as successful. The Ghaznavid Empire lost its zeal and vigor. None of them had that zeal and vigor that Mahmud Ghaznavi had. They focused more on Lahore, they focused more on Multan and all these cities, and they shifted the capital from to Lahore. Um, few years after the demise of Mahmud Ghaznavi, the tussle between the Ghorids and the Ghaznavid began. And in 1152, Alauddin, who was a Ghorid leader, he initiated, set ablaze the city of Ghazna. And his son Saifuddin Muhammad, he became the successor for he became the Ghorid leader. And then eventually his nephew Ghiyasuddin, he became the leader. Or Ghiyasuddin Bana, so he captured the city in 1173. He captured the city and he handed Ghazna, which was a turning point. And then he handed it over to Shahabuddin Ghori. Shahabuddin Ghori was also a very ambitious person. He came into power in 1173. He attacked South Asia. He first entered through Gomal Pass. He attacked cities of Uch and Multan. In 1175, he was defeated in Gujarat. He went back. He then entered again, attacked the Ghaznavid territories. He successfully conquered Peshawar in 1179, Multan in 1185, and Lahore in, okay, maybe I got lost. 1 second. Yes. Sorry. So he attacked Peshawar in 1179, Sialkot in 1185, and Lahore in 1186. And after invading the Ghaznavid territories, he focused on the Rajput territories. And this time this is about Battle of Tarains. So there were two Battle of Tarains, 1191 and 1192. When Mahmud Ghaznavi went into the war against, he conquered Bhatinda. And after when he was coming back from Bhatinda, the ruler of Bhatinda, who was a Rajput, Hindu Rajput, Prithvi Raj Chauhan, he came with his force to defend his land, and both of them met at the Battle of Tarain. This was when Mahmud Shahabuddin Ghori lost this war. He went back to Ghazni, he prepared again, and this time next year he came back, and then he won the battle, which paved path for all the his future expeditions. And then he expanded the Ghorid dynasty. In the same year, he captured Badaun and Oud. In 1195, he captured Kannauj and Banaras. In 1196, he captured Gwalior and Bayana. His famous general, most trusted lieutenant, he conquered Delhi, and he became the first Muslim governor in 1196. He captured Delhi. And another general from his army, Bakhtiyar Khilji, he captured Oud. And when he was said to look after Oud, and he collected revenue from the land, and he created a small force. And then he captured Bengal and Assam. Eventually, assassination of Shahabuddin Ghori happened while he was going on his way to Lahore. And he died at a place called Damak, which is in present-day Jhelum. And so he was assassinated there, offering prayers, and he was laid to rest there. His legacy was that he established an empire that lasted for more than 7 centuries, and he ruled like no one else ruled. He expanded from a small city-state of Ghazni, and then he expanded to Bengal and Assam. And he was not only a brave soldier, but an empire builder. And his invasion and his empire led to the formation of the 5 dynasties that would rule Delhi and other parts of India for a very long period of time, for almost 4 centuries. So this is, I think our time is up. We have like 2 minutes because we started 2 to 3 minutes late. So I'll be there for next 5 minutes. If anyone has any confusion or any questions or any suggestions, please give it to me before the next lecture so that I could improve my lecture. And if there's anything that I could tell you, please ask right now. Is there any confusion in today's lecture? Is there something that you would want me to make better? Anything? Have I been audible? Am I audible, right? Okay, let's see how many students are there. Okay, there are 10 of us. Okay. So my background is in marketing. I did my graduation in BBA. I had bachelor's in business administration, and I cleared my exams in 2014. And since then, I worked on and off in corporate as well as in academic sector. And I appeared in 2020. I unfortunately couldn't clear, and appeared in 2021. And alhamdulillah, I cleared in my second attempt, and I got allocated in Pakistan Customs. So this is my academic. And any other question? Thank you. I actually prepared PPT. और आप लोगों को कोई भी मुझे honestly I was a bit nervous because Zoom classes और in-person classes में बहुत फर्क होता है. So Zoom classes में भी अगर आपके साथ technical issue हो जाए, so it could actually backfire. All of the people who are watching, who will watch on YouTube, obviously, तो उनके लिए भी मेरा मैसेज यही है कि इंडो पाक हिस्ट्री को जो है आप जितना इंटरेस्टिंग बना के पढ़ें, जितना इंटरेस्ट लेके पढ़ें, उतना अच्छा है. आप इस पर बहुत अच्छा स्कोर कर सकते हैं बिकॉज इसमें कोई चीज अनएक्सपेक्टेड आने के चांसेस बहुत कम है. सिलेबस इज वेरी फोकस्ड और मेरे ख्याल से जो इश्यूज चल रहे होते हैं, लेक्चर प्रिपेयर्ड फ्रॉम द बुक पाकिस्तान. Okay, nahi, I haven't read this book at all. At all. I took it from different sources. I usually use internet a lot. So मुझे जहाँ अच्छी कोई information लगे. Again, I'll mention कि Wikipedia जो है वो बहुत अच्छा source है. Okay. Okay, so how many people are left? How many people? Okay, so there. Okay, so I should just check it. Lecture prepared. Okay, revise. So I have revised all the lecture. The lectures is supposed to end now because 11 baj gaye hain. It's 11, and I can. If anyone else has a question, please ask me so that I could leave after that. And I would want my next lecture to be more interactive. So I'll ask you people to. Okay, अपना mic कभी close कर दें if you don't have any question to ask. Okay. सही है ठीक है. So I'll just अब मैं ये lecture अपना खत्म करती हूँ और इंशाल्लाह हम next class में मिलेंगे तो we will study in detail about the slave dynasties in the Mughal Empire, and we may even start the British era or the decline of Mughal Empire, British arrival भी हम करेंगे. War of Independence तक इंशाल्लाह हम लेके जाएंगे इसको, क्योंकि Muslim rule and heritage जो है वो 1857 तक है और इतना मुश्किल नहीं है. जितना आप इंटरेस्ट लेके पढ़ेंगे, जितनी चीजें आपके जहन में आएंगी, जितनी आप कॉन्वर्सेशन करेंगे, उतना अच्छा रहेगा आपके लिए. और इंशाल्लाह नेक्स्ट लेक्चर इज गोइंग टू बी फार बेटर देन दिस वन. आई होप आपको लेक्चर समझ में आया हो और टिल नेक्स्ट वीक इंशाल्लाह. अल्लाह.